Okay.
Got it. Let's see. Let me get that so I don't have to look at that. So who's facing? I'll look at Mendy's face. Fine. When Mendy asked me, something I've been thinking about. Excuse me. Something that I've been thinking about for a while. As most of you know, the Gabby at the 745 million, and things happen. So there's sometimes things when things happen, sometimes they make me think, or go back or forward and whatever. So what this is going to be is I was going to talk about Tircha de Tzibur. What is that? What is it? First of all, from the Gabby's point of view, I figured I saw it actually from a wider point of view and sort of talk about what is it. Because most people, if I ask somebody what it is, they're liable to say, well, this happens in shul or that happens in shul. But the rabbis in the Gemara seem to have a certain idea of what it is. And the definition that I saw at some of the websites that I looked at had a very sort of a different take on it, I think. So let's just say, what is it? What do the rabbis call it? In the Gemara in Yoma 68b, there's this situation that's described, and what is it? It talks about. It's on the 10th of Tishrei. It's Yom Kippur. The Torah has been taken out. I assume that they had some kind of an ark in the temple, and it says the Chazan HaKnesset. The translation here in Sfaria is the synagogue attendant. It doesn't say necessarily it's a Chazan. By the way, we'll talk a little bit about what's in a siddur. So if you have a siddur handy, you might be able to follow along a little bit. And the synagogue attendant takes a Torah scroll, gives it to the head of the synagogue, and he passes it to the deputy high Kohen HaGadol, the high priest, and who in turn passes it or gives it to the high priest, the Kohen Gadol. And what does he do? He basically takes it, he stands, receives the scroll, he reads from the scroll, from Parshas Acharei Mos. And the beginning is but on the 10th. This is from Leviticus, and he furls the Torah, places it on his bosom. I guess he rolls it and unrolls it. He reads it, and then the parsha. He reads after he finishes that portion. If you look in the Yom Kippur Machzor, it talks about. You see exactly the portions that he reads from. What we read today on Yom Kippur, but he doesn't take out a second Sefer Torah. There's no second Torah that he takes out. He reads from Numbers, from Devarim, the portion on Devarim that we read on Yom Kippur for the Maftir, and he reads it by heart. And he's not allowed to take out. He's not allowed to basically roll it back and forth from Leviticus to Numbers. He's not allowed to do that because it would be it would insult the honor of the community it would be a Tircha de Tzibur, I guess is the word, the phrase that I wanted to use. He rolls it and he unrolls it. Of course, according to Rashi today, Rashi points out even in his time, we now take out two Torahs. And there's other things that are not used, that they're not allowed to use for, they're not allowed to use, put the parts of the text to be read. 2 scrolls are taken out later on. The Mishnah Torah, the priestly blessing. It's not proper to roll the Torah in the presence of the congregation. So the situation might come up that if you say on the situation on, say on Simchas Torah, you take out, when we take out one Torah is rolled to the Parshas Bereshit, the other is the Parshas Zos HaBracha. If you mix the Torahs up and have to roll them, this is a big, this would be considered a big tier for the tzibur. You wouldn't be you would have a problem doing this, but you probably would have to do something to switch the Torahs around, because you can't insult one Torah with the other. So we basically have to be very careful. There is a couple of other things in here that I thought were interesting. This was an essay written about this that I'm sort of taking this from. It says that when we read there was a movement or something. I think Rabbi Yud may have covered this, and when he talked about the brachos of the Gemara, that the sages, one of the possibilities of what would be in the what we would read as part of the Shema might be from Parshas Balak, but they didn't want to do that to make it too long, because it would be a tircha de tzibur. Some examples of it. One of the examples in here in this essay had to do with something that often was discussed in Shomer Torah. What do we do when the Rav is davening? Do we wait for him or not? According to this, there's one of the examples here is of Rabbi Akiva. And what does he say? He says, in regard to one's intent of prayer, what did Rabbi Akiva do? He would pray with the congregation, and he would shorten his prayer and go up to his desire to avoid being an encumbrance on the congregation by making them wait for him to finish his prayer. But when he prayed by himself, he would extend his prayers to an extent that a person would leave Rabbi Akiva alone in one corner of the Beit Medrash and later find him still praying in another corner. Why? Because why would he move? Because of his bows and prostrations, his enthusiasm was so great that he would move almost unwittingly from one corner to the other. So, but Rabbi Akiva, according to this, would accommodate the congregation by shortening it, by davening with them, not making them wait for him. We read a Sefer Torah, we read 7 from it. Okay. One of the things that I've always found interesting, as to give you an idea of what it is. Now, a tircha de tzibur could be almost anything. Somebody could say that I waited too long. We shouldn't have waited so long for the Baal Tefillah to finish his davening, which is something we heard a couple of weeks ago, and sometimes people get insulted by it, and I think so. The Baal Tefillah at that point got a little bit insulted by it, and that is not a good thing. We're supposed to walk a fine line. The specific thing, though, that I wanted to sort of to bring up is something that happened. We had I'm not sure I should mention his name, but we had a prominent rabbi, retired rabbi from who was in the eastern portion of Bergen County, who comes and visits with us because he has family in Israel, and he comes and davens with us when he's sort of in to see them or whatever. He's in for the morning minyan, and he came over to me and he had a yurtzeit. He had an aliyah, we gave him a yurtzeit. The next day he was davening. He came over to me and he asked me a question. He said, "Can I daven for the Amid?" I said, "Of course." And the question was, what should he do about the korbanos? What should he say? And the question comes up all the time. Without going right to what I said to this rabbi, the question does come up, and I heard one person tell me that I forget where he was davening. They said that in the siddur that they were at, it may have been a Chabad's place. I don't know for sure, but he mentioned that, and he said that there gets to be a point after you say the brachot and perhaps the Shema, says skip 2.5 minutes before you get to the next part of before you get to Rabbi Yishmael. And I thought that was kind of interesting, and it sort of occurred to me, I guess, as a sort of a joke, the old vaudeville routine when they would say somebody would take some medicine and he would say skip 4 hours, and they would hand them a rope. If we skip 2 hours, put the next dose. But it was kind of that's not what we're intending to say. And how long should you take from when you do the Birchas Torah? There are 15 brachas, plus the personal stuff that goes before that you say before. Then we say the Akedah. I just wanted to, when I wanted to sort of, what's flashing in front of my face here? I don't know. Anyway, what I wanted to sort of get into is when we usually, what I told the rabbi was, we spend about 6 or 7 minutes to say the in all before we get to Rabbi Yishmael. And it occurred to me, people ask me the question as to about various things. When we do this, when we sort of go through this process of quickly reading it, or because I've been at Minyanim, and I understand that I've been at Minyanim when we were going down to say to Washington with the NORPAC group, we just said the brachos. We pretty much rushed over to the Shema. We got to Rabbi Yishmael, and we didn't say any of it. And the rabbis who were getting on the bus with us to go down there said it. And I understand in Israel they start the davening at Rabbi Yishmael, and many other places that is the minhag. So what's going on? What are we skipping when we say it? Because I think some of the things we talk about, we spend the day on, well, what is in there? Anyway, that was the question. There was excuse me, there was, I was looking in the Gemara that we just did on Gittin, and it had a story in there about a woman in the Beit HaMikdash. The Beit HaMikdash was burning. The Romans had captured her 7 children, and they asked them all, if they would bow down to the emperor, and they all basically said the Shema. And each of the 7 children were executed. And my point to bringing this up is she points out that in saying the Shema, that Abraham, and losing her 7 children, that Abraham only had to sacrifice 1 child, and God gave him a break on it and said, no, you don't have to do it. So there is much in here, and when I'm getting myself lost here. But the point of mentioning that story isn't to impress you that I know the story, but it's just basically to tell you that each of the portions in this part of the morning blessing, the Birkat HaShachar, that we say, seems to have a certain point. It angles in a certain direction. We say the Shema, we say the Akedah, and then we say the Shema, and it seems as though is that the saying the going from the Akedah to the Birkat to the offering to the Karbonos is what we basically skip most of the time, and I'm rambling. And what are the parts in there that we are talking about in the Karbonos? One is the part of the Kior, the copper laver that's used for washing, that Abraham is supposed to use it. And what does it say? It says that the altar that is supposed to wash his hands so they shall not die. Now, a lot of people would tell you that cleanliness is next to godliness and things like that. Then the next thing in there is the taking of the ashes. In other words, even after you've done your olah, you burnt the you burnt your sacrifice. There is an olah. The ashes are supposed to be disposed of properly. The Kohen dons his garments and stuff like that. The next thing is before it's just a Talmud offering, there's a Talmud offering, and we basically ask the rabbis before we say it that we're supposed to be pardon us for our errors and atone for all our iniquities, forgive our willful sins in these days. In other words, by doing this, by saying this and remembering this, by saying this, the numbers. This is from Devarim. We say we talk about the Talmud offering, and what are we losing here by not saying? We're supposed to say it. Our one lamb offering you to perform in the morning, and the second lamb offering you in the afternoon. And what are the details on it? By remembering, I think that the point of remembering these offerings, the Talmud offering, and then the incense that we have, the details on how it's ground up and done into the that is ground up and into a fine thing, and then after talks about how the grind it finely, and then there's a long Gemara. There's some Gemaras on exactly how what's the formula with the thing. Now I know that the recipe, okay, of this is exactly with exact detail, and it says in a few places we don't use urine. We could use urine, but we don't use urine. But it's an exacting detail that you're liable to the death penalty if you don't if you don't do this properly. Now, what's the point? What are we skipping here? What's the point of it? That's what we're skipping, and then we get to a point where I find the most interesting, and I try to say this almost every morning. It says here you shouldn't say it on the Sabbath and the festivals, but I'm not sure. But it talks about the Kohanim, Rabban Olamim. And what is that about? You commanded to bring the continual offering at a set time, and the Kohanim and their assigned blessings. And the key to this whole thing about the Kohanim not being able to do it because because the temple has been destroyed, and we say El Shomer Parim Sichtatenu. Let our lips compensate for the bulls. So, and then basically it gets part more discussion of what happens in the temple. And the point of this is we often don't say any of this because it's a Tirpeh D'Sibur. People are in a rush to get to work. They're in a rush to go down to Washington for NORPAC meetings and whatever other things that they're in a rush to. And we also try to get out early. We don't want to. So we don't say it, and we rush, and we rush and we rush through this whole part of the davening. What I'm saying is that sometimes I think maybe we should remember what we're not saying there. This whole story that by remembering and talking about the temple, our Jewish memory, keeping our history alive about the temple, that we do this. This would be an everyday thing, and not just a Tisha B'Av thing, that we should just keep in mind what we're not saying and what we're missing out on. Anyway, that was pretty much a quick message on what this whole idea of a Tirpeh D'Sibur is sometimes what we're missing in the whole process of skipping and moving around quickly. It may not
Sam.
be. Anyway, I thank everybody.
Sam?
I thank everybody for your time. Any questions?
Yes, Sam.
Sure.
Okay, so historically speaking, do we know when they started to institute that the rabbi speaks on Shabbos during the davening? Historically speaking, is there any record of that?
I am not aware of it. Let's put it that way. As I said, because
I read somewhere, I don't know if it's true or not, that basically we copied that from the Reform movement. The Reform movement basically were the initiators of that, and then eventually the Orthodox took that.
In my understanding of it, when I've done some reading on it, was that what the Reform, what the description of what's in the Siddur, say in that portion about the temple, we as Orthodox Jews basically we refuse to forget it. We are looking to restore the temple. I think what we talk about on Tisha B'Av has everything to do with that. The whole idea that we don't forget, that we mourn it, we remember it, and we want to bring it back. The same way, in a sense, that it's our Jewish memory. And the same way that we take every day, there are parts of the davening where we're reminded that we went to when we were in Egypt. We had the Shema, and then we get right into saying, before we get to Shemona Esrei, God, you took us out of Egypt. And then we say a Shemona Esrei that basically says, bring back the temple. It says exactly what, the temple. The part that I was trying to get through about the temple, about the service, is that we don't want to forget the temple service. We want to remember the whole idea. And what the Reform movement is saying, to answer your question, is when you see Temple Emet or Temple Shalom or Temple Emmanuel, why did the Reform movement call them temples? Because they were basically saying in Germany, and this is ironic that it started in Germany, is that we're Jews, but we don't need to go back we don't need to bring back that temple in Jerusalem. We don't need that anymore. We forget that. We're here. This is our temple. This is the temple. So when you see if we copy the reform basically copied the Goyim, bringing in the organ and bringing all these other things. So talking about the temple, the reform has the whole idea of the temple. That's the whole idea behind why they have the temple, why they call their synagogues or places of worship is a temple, because they know what they're not going back to Jerusalem. They had no idea that they would go back. They didn't want to be bothered with it anymore. It made them, if you know, familiar with the Napoleonic movement, when what he allowed. He wanted a Sanhedrin, but on his own terms. Many, I see your lips moving, but I don't hear you.
Okay, Sam, thank you so much.
I have a question. Can I ask them a quick question?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay, so Tircha de Tzibur, you were focusing more on the Karbonos section, the beginning of davening. But the term Tircha de Tzibur, can it also have to do with other things that could be a tircha in terms of like people walking around and talking the whole time, especially when the Aron Kodesh is open?
Okay, the expression, the term Tircha de Tzibur basically came. It was, as I said, I got this. This was in Sparia. I got this paper from Sparia that I downloaded, and he had the parts of it that there were two phrases. I know I was trying to focus on that if you take too much time to say the Birchas Shachar at the very beginning, it could be a Tircha de Tzibur. People could come over, and I had it happen to me at times, come over to you and say, you know, gotta go faster. You can't spend so much time on it. And that was part of the point of mentioning, I don't want to mention any particular rabbis, but this whole idea of the Rabbi Akiva's story. That rabbis can take long. People can daven long, but if you're davening long in the first row, it's different than davening on the bima. And that's the expression Tircha de Tzibur goes. The Tircha de Tzibur also can have anything, and in a sense is the reason why I sort of went to this is most of the places that I looked at what a Tircha de Tzibur was a very general thing beyond sort of things that you were talking about. Too much talking in the shul. You know, I don't know, name it. I could have sat here trying to give you a shiur. I got up, have a cup of coffee. You could say, "What's he doing? That's a Tircha de Tzibur. I want to sit here and do something else." It could be almost anything that you that is a noise, or it's takes away from the davening. In other words, if you have to sort of go away from what you're talking about from the davening, yes, I focus on a certain part of it to show for a reason. As part of the time as the Gabbai, when I'm sitting there and things happen, and I you know, I sometimes look at my watch to see how long the davening takes. Because I turn around and I see some of the guys who have to go off to work are taking their talismans pulling off. Some people come here to turn on the Zoom, and they're running out before the davening's over. You know, when the davening goes on too long, it could be a Tircha de Tzibur. You know.
Right. Thank you.
I have an idea of what time it would take. There are a lot of other issues to go over on Tircha de Tzibur, but I just thought that the object is that sometimes we have to compress the davening, but when we do it, we lose. We do lose things on a positive note, and we can lose things on a negative note.
Sam?
Go ahead.
So some of us, not everybody holds like this, but some of us, when we get an aliyah, right, when we make that first bracha, some people keep the sefer open, and some people keep the sefer closed. And for those of us who keep the sefer open, the reason for that is that you shouldn't take a second or two longer. Once you close it, then you have to find the place again. So it goes so far, Tikkun D'Tzibur, that you don't want to close that sefer to take 2 or 3 seconds longer to find where the Kriya starts. That's how far Tikkun D'Tzibur goes in terms of being sensitive to the oilam, that we don't keep them there longer in shul.
What
and that's the reason for it.
There's a lot of things that we do that are Tikkun D'Tzibur. As I said, when you take out, when we take out a Torah, we have our Torahs in the Aron marked off Pasha Shvuah, Pasha Rosh Chodesh, and the various other times that we might have it. And Jarosh and Michael Glass and some of the others will sit there and roll the Torah so that when we take out the Torah, it's at the spot that we want it to be at. So we don't have to waste any time rolling. As I said, one of the big issues, the first issue that was in this Tikkun D'Tzibur paper, or basically halachos, that is a Rabbi Moshe Shatkis. I'm not sure. I think he's an old-time rabbi, and he basically the first thing he had to do with not rolling the Torah in front of the congregation, so they would sit there, because keep in mind, when you have to sit there and something's going on, and this was always in, I don't want to bring up ancient history of the shul, but when you have to roll the Torah, you do various things, the rabbi davens too long or whatever it is, people start talking. They get distracted from where they are and what they're supposed to be doing, and this is where we go. And it's a Tikkun D'Tzibur, as Mendy points out. There's all these things that go into the davening. When people go up on Shabbos, and we don't do this during the week, but when people come up on Shabbos and they say a Misha Berach for the Olim, and then they might say a Misha Berach for the family. Sometimes there are people who are, I know when I've been in various places, I often will keep the Misha Berach down to, say all my grandchildren and all my great-grand, and all of this, and all these other people, just keep it down to the basics. In other words, as they might say in baseball, just keep the line moving. And there are places where they don't say Misha Berach just for that reason, because they don't want to keep people there. People want to go to the Kiddush on Shabbos. You'd say, well, you got plenty of time on Shabbos, but people want to get to the Kiddush. They get hungry. Then you're not supposed to eat, whatever. And these are issues that are all. There are a lot of issues that get to be Tikkun D'Tzibur, and unfortunately, sometimes the Gabbai is the one who's the umpire on it, and he's got to make the call. It's not always an easy call, because it is an important thing, as you can tell. There are Gemaras that basically rely on this whole idea. Tikkun D'Tzibur, and what are we supposed to be doing with Tikkun D'Tzibur? What is it doing? How do we keep it going? Do we open the Torah up? When we take out, if you take out 2 Torahs, what happens if we mix up the Torahs? And then you have to sit there and watch them roll it. I mean, it's not something we're supposed to. It's something we have to be very, very careful about. I think that's why they have the plates to put on the front of the Torah, so that when we take them out, we know which one is which. And so we don't make a mistake. We don't have to roll the Torah. We don't have to, because they get the question of, well, was there something wrong? If you have to put a Torah away or shuffle them around, the question was that a bad Torah? Is that sort of like you're insulting the Torah? And it may be a perfectly good Torah. And you don't want to have people asking those questions. What happened? What went wrong? So Anyway,
Okay, Sam.
I just want, this kind of thing, idea, I know I focused on a certain part of it when I spoke, but this kind of a thing was, certain things have happened. And I just want to sort of address them in a very general way. When I have to deal with when we have to deal with it in the shul, sometimes it's more specific. I want to thank Mendy for allowing me to vent a little and to share a little divrei Torah on something that, at least as from the Gabby's point of view, you know, was something I wanted to say. Anyway, thank you very much. And
Thank you, Sam.
for
Thank you
your
very
patience
much.
and for listening.
Also, just check page 44. Page 44 in the link of a nice picture of the bagel judges. And
Mendy.
together with the MC. It's very nice little article. Like, I had to find out who put it in because it didn't come from me. So if anyone knows, let me know. Okay, everybody.
That was a very nice idea. It was a
Have a
very
good
nice idea.
Shabbos.
Anyway.